The man behind the bar had owned the place for 12 years. 6'1", 250 pounds of solid muscle, arms like tree trunks from years of manual labor before he bought the business. His name was Earl McKenna, and in Prescott, Arizona, everyone knew three things about him. He poured a fair drink, he didn't tolerate trouble, and he'd personally thrown out more rowdy customers than any bouncer in the state. Prescott, Arizona, the Iron Horse Saloon, September 22, 1974. Saturday evening, 7:45 p.m. The saloon sat on the edge of town where Whiskey Row met the highway, a genuine Old West building that had survived since 1897. Wooden floors worn smooth by decades of boots, a mahogany bar that had seen 100,000 drinks poured across it, walls decorated with authentic mining equipment, old photographs, cattle brands burned into wooden plaques. The Iron Horse wasn't a tourist trap, it was a local institution, where ranchers came after long days, where construction workers cashed their checks on Fridays, where the town's working men gathered to drink, play pool, tell stories, and occasionally settle disputes with their fists in the parking lot. Earl ran it with an iron hand. No drugs, no weapons visible, no disrespecting the women who came in. Break those rules, and you dealt with Earl. And dealing with Earl meant you either left voluntarily or got carried out. He'd been a construction foreman before buying the bar, spent 20 years pouring concrete, framing houses, doing the kind of back-breaking work that built functional strength. At 52, he could still out-arm wrestle men half his age. This particular Saturday evening, the bar was moderately busy, maybe 40 people scattered throughout the space. The jukebox played Merle Haggard, pool balls clacked in the back room. The smell of beer, cigarettes, and honest sweat hung in the air. Earl stood behind the bar, polishing glasses, surveying his domain. His regular customers occupied their usual spots. He knew their names, their jobs, their families. This was his community, his responsibility. The door opened. 5 men walked in. Earl recognized the type immediately. Outsiders. They wore cleaner clothes, not ranch-worn, not work-stained. Their boots looked new. Their hair was styled differently, longer, more Hollywood than Prescott. They carried themselves with the casual confidence of people who didn't belong but didn't know it yet. One of Earl's regulars, a ranch hand named Tom, leaned across the bar. Film crew. They'd been shooting some Western up at the old mining camp. Heard they might come into town tonight. Earl grunted. He didn't have strong feelings about film crews, but he'd learned over the years that Hollywood people often brought trouble. Not intentionally, just they didn't understand how things worked in real towns, didn't respect the unwritten rules, treated locals like props in their movie set. The 5 men approached the bar. The tallest among them, maybe 6'3", with perfectly styled hair and an expensive leather jacket, spoke first. "Evening. We're with the production shooting up at the Ridge. Thought we'd check out the local scene." Earl nodded. "What can I get you?" 5 beers, whatever's cold." Earl pulled 5 bottles from the cooler, popped the caps, set them on the bar. $12. The tall man paid, left a decent tip. "Nice place, very authentic." "It's not authentic, it's original. Been here since 1897. "Even better," the man smiled. "We're trying to capture that genuine Western feel in the film. This is exactly the atmosphere we want." Earl said nothing, just went back to polishing glasses. The film crew scattered throughout the bar. 4 of them headed toward the pool table, but one stayed near the bar, finding a stool in the corner. He was different from the others, quieter, more contained. Average height, lean build, wearing simple jeans and a button-down shirt, nothing flashy. He sipped his beer slowly, watching the room without seeming to study it. Earl McKenna didn't know was that the quiet man in the corner had been middleweight karate champion of the world and was about to teach him the difference between looking tough and being dangerous. An hour passed. The film crew kept to themselves, played some pool, talked amongst themselves. No trouble. Earl started to relax slightly. Maybe these Hollywood types would be fine. Then Danny Vaughn walked in. Danny was trouble. 28 years old, 6'4", 230 pounds of mean drunk. He'd worked construction with Earl years ago. Good worker when sober, disaster when drinking. Been banned from the Iron Horse twice already. This was his third strike. Danny saw the film crew immediately. His face twisted into something ugly. He'd been drinking before he arrived. Earl could tell from the loose way he moved, the red in his eyes. "Well, well," Danny announced loudly, "Hollywood came to town." The bar went quiet. Locals knew what this meant. Danny had a chip on his shoulder about outsiders, about people he perceived as soft, privileged, fake. Earl stepped out from behind the bar. "Danny, you're not welcome here, you know that." "I just want one drink, Earl, just one." "No, you're banned. Leave now, no trouble. Stay and I call the sheriff." Danny ignored him, walked toward the pool table where 3 of the film crew stood. "You boys making a movie, playing cowboy, pretending to be tough?" The tall man, clearly the leader, tried diplomacy. "We're just here for a drink, friend. No trouble intended." "I'm not your friend." Danny's voice was rising. "I'm sick of you Hollywood types coming to our towns, using our locations, acting like we're just scenery for your fake stories. We pay local businesses, hire local workers. We're not your parasites. You come in, take what you want, leave nothing but trash." Earl was moving around the bar now. "Danny, last warning. Leave, now." Danny's hand shot out, grabbed the tall man's jacket. "Maybe I should teach you city boys what real fighting looks like, not your choreographed movie bullshit." That's when the quiet man in the corner stood up. He didn't rush, didn't shout, just stood and walked toward the confrontation with unhurried purpose. "Danny," Earl barked, "let him go." But Danny was past listening. He shoved the tall man backward into the pool table. Cues clottered to the floor, beer bottles tipped over. The quiet man reached them. "Let's all calm down." Danny turned, looked at him, saw someone smaller, lighter, no obvious threat. "Who the hell are you?" "Chuck, I'm with the film crew, and I'm asking you politely, let my friend go, walk away, no one gets hurt." You laughed. "You asking me? You?" He released the tall man, turned his full attention to Chuck. "You think you can make me leave?" "I think you should choose to leave. Better for everyone." "What if I don't?" Chuck's expression remained calm. "Then Earl will call the sheriff. You'll get arrested. You'll have another charge on your record. That what you want?" Danny's face flushed red. "You don't tell me what I want, Hollywood. You know what? I think I'm going to teach you a lesson about respect." He threw a right hook, wild, telegraphed, drunken, the kind of punch that had worked in bar fights because most people couldn't react fast enough. Chuck's head wasn't. What happened in the next 8 seconds would become the most repeated story in Prescott, Arizona, told in the Iron Horse Saloon for the next 20 years. Danny's punch hit air. His momentum carried him forward. Chuck's hand touched his extended arm, not grabbing, just guiding. Suddenly, Danny's own force was working against him. He stumbled, caught himself on a table. He spun around, angrier now, embarrassed, threw a left hook, then a right cross. Bar-fighting combinations, street-tested aggression. Chuck moved between them. Not big movements, not dramatic dodges, just subtle positioning. Danny's punches found nothing but space, and each time he missed, Chuck's hand would make light contact, shoulder, elbow, wrist, redirecting, unbalancing, controlling. Earl watched from behind the bar, stunned. He'd seen hundreds of bar fights. This wasn't a fight. This was something else entirely. Danny, breathing hard now, realized he couldn't touch this guy. Frustration boiled over. He charged, arms wide, trying to tackle, use his size and weight to overwhelm. Chuck stepped to the side, his foot hooked behind Danny's ankle, his hands guided Danny's shoulders. Physics and timing. Suddenly, Danny was airborne. He hit the wooden floor hard, flat on his back. The impact knocked the wind out of him. Complete silence in the bar. Danny lay there, gasping, trying to breathe. His eyes were wide, shock and confusion. He'd charged a smaller man and ended up on the floor. His alcohol-fogged brain couldn't process how it happened. Chuck stood above him, perfectly balanced, breathing normally. "You should stay down. You're drunk. You're angry. This doesn't end well for you if you keep going." Danny tried to push himself up. His arms were shaking. The fall had rattled him, but his pride, that stubborn, destructive pride, wouldn't let him quit. Earl stepped in. "Danny, it's over. Stay down." But Danny was already trying to stand, got to one knee, reached for a chair to steady himself. Chuck's voice was quiet. "Last chance. Walk away." Danny grabbed the chair, not to stand, to swing. He lifted it, turned toward Chuck with wild eyes. That's when Chuck moved decisively. He closed the distance in 2 steps. His hand struck Danny's wrist, precise, controlled, targeting a nerve cluster. Danny's hand opened involuntarily. The chair dropped. Before Danny could react, Chuck had stepped behind him, controlling his arm, guiding him down. Not violently, not aggressive, just inevitable. Danny ended up on his knees, his arm controlled in a lock that didn't hurt but made movement impossible. He tried to resist. The more he pushed, the more uncomfortable it became. "Breathe," Chuck said quietly. "Stop fighting. It's over." Danny's struggle weakened. The alcohol, the failed attacks, the absolute control this smaller man had demonstrated, it all crashed down. He stopped resisting. Earl approached. "I'm calling the sheriff." "No." Chuck's voice was still calm. "He's done. Aren't you, Danny?" Danny nodded weakly. Chuck released him, stepped back. Danny stayed on his knees for a moment, head down, breathing hard. Then he slowly stood, swaying slightly. "I'm sorry," Danny muttered, not looking at anyone. I'm sorry." He walked toward the door, not rushed, not running, just defeated. The door closed behind him. The bar remained silent for another few seconds. Then conversation slowly resumed. Nervous laughter, people processing what they'd witnessed. But Earl McKenna stood frozen behind his bar because he'd just seen something that challenged everything he thought he knew about fighting. Earl had been in dozens of fights, had thrown out hundreds of drunks. He understood bar fighting. Size, strength, aggression, those were the currencies. You overwhelmed people, intimidated them, made them submit through force. But this quiet man had used none of that. No aggression, no wasted movement, no force meeting force, just control, complete, total, effortless control. Chuck returned to his stool, picked up his beer, which hadn't even been finished, and took another sip, as if nothing had happened. Earl walked over. "What's your name?" "Chuck Norris." "Chuck!" Earl extended his hand. I don't have words for what that was. Chuck shook his hand. "Danny's not a bad guy, just drunk and angry. He'll be fine tomorrow. Danny's a problem drunk who's been terrorizing this town for 2 years, and you just handled him like he was a child." He telegraphed everything. His balance was off from alcohol. He wasn't thinking, just reacting. Not hard to manage once you understand the mechanics. "Not hard?" Earl almost laughed. "I've had to physically throw him out twice. Both times it took 3 of us. He's 6'4", 230 pounds, and you did it alone, without breaking a sweat." "Because I didn't fight him. I redirected him, used his own force against him." Earl shook his head. "I've been bouncing drunks for 12 years. I thought I knew how to handle trouble, but what you did, that's a different level." The tall man from the film crew approached. "Chuck, you okay?" "Fine." "That was incredible. Where'd you learn to do that?" "Years of training. It's what I do." The tall man looked at Earl. "You asked his name. You didn't recognize it?" "Should I?" "Chuck Norris, 6-time world karate champion, undefeated middleweight champion for years. He's one of the best martial artists in the world." Earl stared at Chuck. "You're a champion?" Chuck shrugged. "Was. Retired from competition this year. Just doing some acting now, teaching when I can." "And you didn't think to mention that before?" "Why would I? It wasn't relevant until Danny made it relevant." Earl looked at the door where Danny had left, then back at Chuck. "He could have really hurt someone tonight, could have hurt my customers, damaged my bar, and you stopped it without anyone getting injured, without even making it look difficult. That's the goal. Control the situation, minimize harm, everyone goes home safe." "But you could have hurt him. When he swung that chair, you could have put him in the hospital." "I could have, but what would that accomplish? Danny needs help, not more pain. He's angry about something deeper than Hollywood people being in town." Earl nodded slowly. "His wife left him 6 months ago, took their kids. He's been spiraling since. That explains the aggression. He's hurting, looking for something external to blame."
What Earl McKenna said next would surprise everyone in the bar, including himself. "Can you teach me what you did?" Chuck looked at him. "Teach you?" "Whatever that was, that control, that efficiency. I've been relying on size and intimidation for 12 years, but watching you, you didn't need either. You just understood how to move, where to position yourself. I want to learn that. It takes years of training. I've got years. I'm 52. I'll probably run this bar another decade at least, and I'm tired of violence being the only solution. Tired of hurting people to keep order." Chuck studied him. "You serious?" "Completely. How much do you charge for lessons?" "I don't charge. If someone's genuinely interested in learning, I teach them, but it requires commitment, regular practice, unlearning bad habits you've developed over years." "I can commit." "Why? You've been successful running this bar without martial arts training. Why change now?" Earl looked around his establishment, at the worn floors, the scarred bar, the customers returning to their drinks and conversations. "Because I just watched you de-escalate a situation that usually ends with broken furniture, police reports, and hospital visits. And you did it without anger, without ego, just competence. That's what I want. Not to beat people up, to protect people without becoming what I'm protecting them from." Chuck extended his hand. "All right, I'm here for 3 more weeks while we finish shooting. Come by the set during lunch breaks. I'll show you some basics." Earl shook his hand. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. It's harder than it looks. You'll be frustrated, probably want to quit after the first week." Earl smiled. "I spent 20 years in construction. I don't quit." Over the next 3 weeks, something remarkable happened, and it changed the culture of the Iron Horse Saloon in ways no one expected. Chuck showed up at the bar every day during lunch. They'd move tables aside, clear a space, and Chuck would teach Earl basics, stance, balance, how to redirect force, how to read body language, how to control someone without hurting them. The regulars watched, at first with skepticism. This Hollywood martial arts stuff couldn't work in real bars against real drunks. But as they watched Earl, who they knew was genuinely tough, struggle to apply techniques against Chuck's effortless demonstrations, their skepticism turned to curiosity. One afternoon, Tom, the ranch hand, approached. "Earl, could I learn too?" Earl looked at Chuck. "You mind? More students, more interesting. Sure." Within a week, 5 of Earl's regulars were attending the...
The film wrapped, but the story of what happened at the Iron Horse Saloon spread and brought unexpected changes to Prescott, Arizona. 3 months after Chuck left, Earl received a letter. It was from Danny Vaughn. "Earl, I'm writing from a treatment facility in Phoenix. Been here 2 months, working on my drinking problem. I'm not writing to make excuses for my behavior. I was wrong, dangerous. I could have hurt people. But I wanted you to know something. That night when the Hollywood guy, Chuck, put me down without really hurting me, it did something to me. I'd been in plenty of fights, always hurt people or got hurt, but he controlled me without violence, showed me there was another way. That stuck with me. When I sobered up the next morning, I couldn't stop thinking about it. How he had every right to hurt me but chose not to. How he ended the situation without anyone bleeding. It made me realize I'd been choosing violence for years when other options existed. That maybe I wasn't as tough as I thought, just angry and destructive. Anyway, I'm working on myself. Got 3 months sober now. When I get out, I'd like to come by the bar and apologize properly, if you'll have me. Danny. Earl showed the letter to Tom and the other regulars who'd been training with Chuck's techniques. Think he means it? Tom asked. I think Chuck gave him something to think about. Whether he does the work, that's on Danny. 4 months later, Danny did come by, sober, thinner, different energy. He apologized to Earl, to the customers he'd terrorized, to the community he'd disrupted. Earl hired him to do maintenance work around the bar, nothing involving alcohol, just fixing things, helping out, giving him structure. Within a year, Danny was attending AA meetings regularly, had reconnected with his kids, and was teaching anger management techniques at the local community center. He'd tell his story to other men struggling with rage and alcohol. Someone showed me you can have power without using it, control without violence. That changed everything. In 1983, 9 years after that night, a regional newspaper ran a feature about small-town Arizona, and Earl McKenna.
The final word on this story came from Chuck Norris himself in a 2001 interview about unexpected teaching experiences. The interviewer asked, "What's the most surprising place you've taught martial arts?" Chuck smiled. "A saloon in Arizona, 1974. We were shooting a Western nearby, got into a situation at a local bar, ended up teaching the owner and some regulars during lunch breaks." "What kind of situation?" "Drunk guy causing trouble. I intervened. Bar owner saw how I handled it and asked me to teach him, so I did." "Just during lunch breaks?" "Just during lunch breaks. 3 weeks, basics only. But sometimes basics are all people need. They don't need to become black belts. They just need to understand principles, how to stay balanced, how to redirect force, how to read when something's about to escalate." "Did you stay in touch?" "Got letters for years. The bar owner, Earl, would update me, tell me about incidents they'd handled without violence, about how the culture of the place changed, about a regular drunk who got sober and turned his life around. It was unexpected. I just showed a few techniques. They built something bigger from it." "What did you learn from that experience?" Chuck was quiet for a moment. "That you never know when you'll have a teaching moment. I wasn't trying to change anyone's life that night, just trying to keep a situation from getting worse. But Earl was ready to learn. The timing was right. He took what I showed him and built on it. That's the best kind of teaching, when the student takes the seed and grows something you never imagined." "Would you do it again?" "I do it all the time. That's what teaching is, meeting people where they are, showing them what's possible, then stepping back and letting them choose their path." The story of Chuck Norris and the Iron Horse Saloon eventually became part of Prescott folklore, not because of the confrontation with Danny, that was brief and witnessed by only 40 people, but because of what came after. A bar owner who learned that true strength is control, a town drunk who discovered sobriety through being shown respect, a community that chose de-escalation over violence. On September 22, 1974, in a saloon that had seen a century of bar fights, something different happened. Not another brawl, not another beating, not another police report. Just a quiet demonstration that competence and restraint can be more powerful than size and aggression. And sometimes the greatest victory is teaching someone they don't need to fight at all.